And we're live.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It is I, the notorious, glorious V, the Gorilla Economist, and I'm with my main man, El Cuco, a.k.a. CJ, the producer extraordinaire, and we have our special, I need to come up with a name for Sasha. I need to come up with a name. Our world-famous attorney, who is the crypto extraordinaire herself, Sasha Hodor is here.
Hotter.
I'm talking. CJ pulled up the thing and Hodler. I was about to call you Hodler. Because, oh my god. Anyway, Sasha's here to join us. It's going to be an awesome day today, guys. Anyway, follow us on Twitter. I am getting ahead of myself, and I'm only on my second cup of coffee. Wow. Follow us on Twitter at Real Rogue News. RealRogueNews.com, and also check out our paid sponsors, mycbdedibles.com, mycbdedibles.com. Whether you want some delicious, delectable coffee, like I'm drinking right now, totally wired, or you want some CBD-infused coconut oil, chocolate peanut butter bonbons, or my perennial favorite that CJ and I will absolutely shank somebody on a prison yard for, it is the white chocolate coconut pecan truffles. The white chocolate coconut pecan truffles are to die for.
Oh, they look good.
You have no idea. You have no CJ. How good? I'm tired of talking. CJ, why don't you tell about the white chocolate pecan truffles?
They don't allow me in the kitchen anymore because when they're making them, I'll say, "Hey, I needed to sample another one just to make sure the texture is even." And they're like, "Bullshit! You're not getting any more. You already had 8.
So good.
I step away.
It's so good. It's so good. I was totally floored, man. I was wow, totally floored. The texture is right, the flavor is right. It's just absolutely delicious. So go there, order yourself a batch of the white chocolate coconut pecan truffles, and you'll find out what CJ and I are talking about. It is slap your mama good, slap your mama good. And also, guys, go to the podcast, the Patreon. Oh, I am so jumbled up this morning. I apologize, guys. I just had some exciting news, but anyway, go to the Patreon, where I am there and breaking down all things geostrategic, geoeconomic, and most of all, Sasha's here. So go to Sasha's Hodlcast. Right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the Hodlcast.
The Hodlcast, where Sasha's breaking down all things crypto, all things legalities, touching a wide range of topics from civil liberties to economic freedom. I mean, you name it, it's there. She does a fantastic job, and we are proud to have her on board here. So excited to have her. And with that being said, guys, what's going on? This is week, 5, 6, 7? I don't even know what day.
I lost count.
Sunday?
I lost count. Today's Friday. It's Good Friday.
Oh, I thought it was Sunday again. I'm losing it. I mean, it's going crazy. I mean, Sasha was being barricaded in her office by her pet cat. It's affecting animals, folks. This lockdown is even affecting animals. It's crazy. So what's new, guys?
Go ahead, Sasha.
I'm excited to be going to an Airbnb tonight or this afternoon. So I'm going to get some lakefront views for the weekend. So that'll be good. Awesome. Except we got to clean it pretty well when we get there.
Oh, yeah. Bring the Lysol and start spraying and praying.
Yeah. Spray and pray.
Spray and pray. Exactly. Siege, what's going on with you, man?
Well, I was telling Sasha before you jumped on, I want to just real quick minute. I think I sent you the link to this as well, V, that over the weekend there was a doctor based out of New York, Cameron Kyle Sadell. Mm-hmm. And Cameron just, really felt compelled because he's, works in the ICU. He's, basically watching people being put on a vent who in their protocols really just didn't seem right that they were venting these people. So long story short, he had one patient that just said to him, "Hey, don't put me on a vent until the very last minute unless you absolutely have to." And it just really made him pause for a minute to think, why are we doing this? What is the protocol that's being determined now? This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is real. His work was recently featured on WebMD on Medscape, which is kind of like the media platform for WebMD, where he discussed, why he decided to do this. He was so compelled that the protocols need to be challenged or questioned that he actually stepped out of his position at the ICU because he could no longer do that, because he said, "I think there was a better way of doing it." The only reason he was questioning that because he worked on different levels, whether it was the ER, the ICU, and he was seeing patients along the way with COVID and really questioning. So, V, I think we can discuss it and maybe even play some of it under the fair use.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a lot of benefit because it really, honestly, I think it really could save lives. So I'm going to go ahead and share audio right now and bring it up, and we'll start this. It's very compelling. So here we go.
Hello, I'm Dr. John White, Chief Medical Officer at WebMD, and welcome to Coronavirus in Context. Today, we're going to talk about whether or not we're managing coronavirus correctly, and do we need to think about a change in our treatment regimen. And my guest is Dr. Cameron Kyle Seidel. He's a physician trained in emergency medicine and critical care, and he practices at Maimonides in Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, Dr. Seidel.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
So you've been talking a lot about the number of patients, the percentage of patients actually that are dying on ventilators. When did you first notice this trend?
So in preparation of opening what was, going to be what became a full COVID positive intensive care units, we kind of scoured the data just to see what was out there. And obviously, those that have experienced it before us, primarily the Chinese and the Italians, it was hard to find exactly, what the rate of, what we call successful extubation, meaning someone was put on a ventilator and taken off. And that data is still hard to find. And I imagine there's a lot of people still on ventilators. But from the data we have available, it appears to be, somewhere between 50 and 90%. And it seems that most reports or most published data, puts it around 70%. So, that's a very, very high percentage in general when one thinks of a medical disease.
And you've been talking on social media. You say you see things that you've never seen before. What are some of those things that you're seeing?
So when I initially started treating patients, I was under the impression, as most people were, that I was going to be treating acute respiratory distress syndrome that was similar in some sense to the, ARDS that I saw as a fellow. And as I started to treat these patients, I witnessed things that are just unusual. And I'm sure doctors around the country are experiencing this. It's not, in the past, we don't see patients that are talking in full sentences and not complaining of overt shortness of breath with saturations in the high 70s. It's just not something we typically see. When we're intubating some of these patients, that is to say, when we're putting a breathing tube in, they tend to drop their saturations very quickly. And we see saturations going down to 20 to 30. And typically one would expect some kind of reflexive response from the heart rate. Which is to say, usually we see tachycardia, and if patients go too low, then we see bradycardia. And these are things that, we just weren't seeing. I've seen literally a saturation of 0 on a monitor, which is not something we ever want and something we actually actively try to avoid. And yet, we saw it, and many of my colleagues have similarly have seen, saturations of 10 and 20. And our whole practice is aimed when we try to put breathing tubes in is to avoid this very situation. Now, these patients tend to desaturate extremely quickly. And so these situations have occurred. And still, what we're seeing, that there was no change in the heart rate, is just unusual. It's just something that we are not used to. So that's
suggesting that this is more like a high altitude sickness. Is that right? Rather than a viral pneumonia that we're talking.
Yeah. So what I was trying to find, the patients in front of me are unlike any patients I've ever seen. And I've seen, a great many number of patients, and I've treated many diseases, and you get used to seeing certain patterns, and just the patterns I was seeing did not make sense. Now this, originally came to be when we had a patient who had hit what we called our trigger to put in a breathing tube, meaning she had displayed a level of hypoxemia, of low oxygen levels, where we thought she would need a breathing tube. And most of the times when patients hit that level of hypoxemia, they are in distress and they can barely talk and they can't say complete sentences. And she could do all of those, and she did not want a breathing tube. And so she asked that we put it in at the last minute possible. And it was this perplexing clinical condition. When I was supposed to put the breathing tube in, when was the last minute possible? And all the instincts as a physician, we're looking to see if she, so-called tires out, if she's getting too tired. None of those things occurred. And it's extremely perplexing, but I came to realize that this condition is nothing I've ever seen before. And so I started to try to read and try to figure out what, and leaving aside the exact mechanism for how this disease is causing havoc on the body, but just trying to figure out what the clinical syndrome looked like.
Talk a little bit about the data from Italy and Madanoni. Were you aware of what was going on in Italy before you noted these observations, or did that come after the fact?
So that came a little bit after, and I wasn't aware. I can't even remember the exact timeline, but in my reading, I sort of came upon decompression pulmonary sickness, which is, essentially the bends when divers dive and come up too quick, which seemed to have some kind of a mirror picture clinically as these patients. And then, in discussions with other people, it came up that, they do similarly appear clinically. And this is not to say that the pathophysiology underlying it is similar, but clinically they look a lot more like high altitude sickness than do pneumonia. And Gattinoni, he published something on March 20th, which was about 2 days before I opened the ICU. And I don't know that I read it then, but somehow it got passed around. And in my mind, by the time I read what he was saying, I'd come under the impression that this just wasn't the usual ARDS that we were used to seeing. It was a high compliance disease, which every pulmonologist and anyone managing a ventilator can see. That's not a question. And so then when I read his stuff, where he's suggesting that the management strategy that we use is essentially somewhat flipped, at least in these high compliant patients, it just became more clear that if we operate under a paradigm whereby we are treating ARDS in these high compliant patients, we may be not operating under the right paradigm, which is
how have you changed your protocols then?
So to be honest, I've run into a great deal of resistance within my institution, which is not to say that anyone is trying to stymie progress at all. These are the protocols that are in every major hospital and minor hospital. I mean, we generally
you talked about in your videos, against long-standing dogma. So what's been the response from your clinical colleagues as well as hospital administrators?
So to be honest, in the ICU, I started to try to run not my own protocols, but to treat patients as I would have treated my family under with a different goals, which is to say a ventilation. However, these didn't fit the protocol, and the protocol is what the hospital runs on, with the respiratory therapists, what the nurses. I mean, everyone is part of the team. And so actually we ran into an impasse where I could not morally in a patient-doctor relationship, I could not continue the current protocols, which again are the protocols of the top hospitals in the country. But I could not continue those. And obviously they couldn't have you can't have one doctor just doing their own protocol. So I actually had to step down.
Let's pause it there for a minute and provide a little commentary. Obviously, we're covering this, and we're under the what's it called? The able to watch this video and provide commentary. The Fair Use Act. Why we're providing commentary. But what do you guys think so far?
Well, here, Sasha, you want to go first, and I'll chime in.
Well, it sounds pretty scary. I guess we're just in times that are unprecedented. So, we need to figure out the right approaches, and that is good that doctors are questioning whether putting people on ventilators or how to do it, but we can't blame the doctors that have been putting people on ventilators, because that's all they know. I think everyone's doing their best right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, I'll break this down for you guys from a medical standpoint. I know a little bit about bio, being with my background. It's pretty interesting when they were discussing about desaturation. Okay, and desaturation, what's happening is that they're putting these people who are supposedly, when you run an X-ray through, you see that glassiness within the lungs, and that typically typifies, the lungs are in trouble. There needs to be some sort of an intervention, and then when you put the patient on a ventilator, the ventilator, because of air pressure, is supposed to inflate the lungs and help and assist in the breathing. But being on a ventilator for what they prescribe to be 10 days or whatever on average for COVID is quite damaging to the lung, to the lung in general, to the lung tissue. Often, those who come off of ventilators for a prolonged period of time have some sort of lung damage. Okay, and the biggest thing is the saturation levels of oxygen. Right. In other words, you're having, and what they're witnessing is some sort of long-term progressive hypoxia. Your body is being starved of oxygen, all right? So something is happening. And what is the main carrier of oxygen within the blood? That would be your red blood cells, all right? And specifically the hemoglobin that is within the red blood cells, the heme component. That's why you have heme, which is a very vital component to iron, okay? And heme iron is what is needed in order to saturate your body and your body's bloodstream and its tissues with oxygen. That's why you cannot be a vegan long term, because you don't have heme iron. Okay? Now watch this. What this doctor has said is there's constantly patients that every time they're thrown on an event, they are constantly desaturating. And the desaturation, which is the absolute, visceration of heme, of iron, of oxygen within the bloodstreams itself, is what's causing the organ failures, which you also see. All of a sudden, we put Mr. Smith on the ventilator, and all of a sudden he has a heart attack, or he's having other types of organ failure. His kidneys are failing. Why? Because what is happening is that COVID-19, and what a lot of researchers are trying to discover, some scientists are discovering this as well. I was reading up on it. A lot of researchers are finding that the COVID-19 has certain glycoproteins, right? Certain glycoproteins, and glycoproteins, depending on how they're structured, can bond to the very heme that's in the red blood cells. And once it's bonded to the heme, you are basically ripping apart that covalent bond between iron, okay? You're basically, ripping that bond from the oxidative iron ion from the red blood cell. So you need that heme. Without the heme, the iron becomes and goes from being an oxygenating, component that is valuable, almost acting as an antioxidant, and it becomes an oxidative free radical. All right. So without that ion, that heme ion, the hemoglobin, the red blood cell, cannot bind oxygen, cannot carry it. It has completely been hamstrung. It's rendered totally worthless, useless. It can't do nothing. Okay? And what's happening, this is what most people are saying, oh my God, acute respiratory distress is happening, or ARDS, right? Or they're complaining of pneumonia-like symptoms. And what's happening, folks, is this. The doctors are starting to believe, they're starting to wake up to these who are witnessing these individuals that are in ICU. They're starting to wake up to the fact that, hey, you know what? We're really being tricked here. We're being thrown for a loop. We're all thinking this is pneumonia. Okay? We're all thinking that this is some sort of ARDS. And because we're thinking it's pneumonia, because we're thinking that there's ARDS, we're throwing them on a ventilator and there's still desaturation. Like this doctor said, we've seen it go from 30 to 20. It's just the levels are dropping. We're wondering what the hell's going on. Okay? But what's happening, folks, what they're discovering is this. It's the ventilators, all right, are not helping the situation. And what's happening with the desaturation is that the lungs are pumping just fine. The lungs are not quitting. And then they're being put on these ventilators, which is causing irreparable damage. And what they're finding out is that the hemoglobin that's been stripped of any ability to carry the needed oxygen, which is now causing the hypoxia, the body has to compensate for this. Okay, they got to compensate somehow. And then what happens is this. So if heme is not being carried by the red blood cell, your body's like, okay, well I'm in an oxygen-starved environment. What the hell do I do? If anybody's been in high altitude, you know this. If you're living in Colorado, you're in the Mile High City, or you've done high altitude training, or you've been in what's called a CVAC machine, which I've done before, where it literally simulates taking your body up to 30,000 feet and dropping you repeatedly over and over again. What happens is your body's tricked into thinking, hey, you know what? I'm in an oxygen-starved environment. So what do I need to do? Well, all of a sudden your body, right, kicks in the hormone erythropoietin. And what's erythropoietin do? It triggers your kidney. Your kidney releases erythropoietin, which gets your bone marrow to hyperdrive the production of brand new red blood cells. All right, there we go. Body's like, all right, good. I'm going to release more blood cells. We're oxygen. We need more red blood cells to carry more oxygen. Okay? And this is the reason why in every single COVID patient, folks, we're finding elevated hemoglobin as well as decreased blood oxygen levels. How is that possible? How do you have elevated hemoglobin levels, right? But at the same time, we have a decreased blood oxygen saturation. And this is one of the primary red flags, one of the absolute red flags of this whole entire thing. And the only way that this is happening is because that bond is being destroyed. Now, here's the craziest part: this is why when you look at the whole hydroxychloroquine thing, it really comes in, right? You've heard this desaturation happening. You've heard stories of, hey, in Italy they were they were doing blood transfusions. I was wondering, why are they doing blood transfusions? You've probably heard the story. Like in Lombardy, they were like, they're doing blood drives. Donate blood. And I'm wondering why the hell they're donating blood for. Well, they're donating blood because the blood is rich in oxygen. Because the COVID patients have deoxygenated blood. They're being desaturated of oxygen. So this is why the blood transfusion thing is happening, because they're responding to a desaturation. They don't know what the hell's going on. So they're like, okay, patient's desaturating, lungs are going well. We put them on the ventilator. They're still desaturating. We need a blood transfusion. They don't know what the hell is going on. Okay? And all of a sudden, the whole thing with hydroxychloroquine comes into play, right? Now, if you look at malaria, how does malaria function? Malaria utilizes whatever the host hemoglobin is, right? Whatever the host, if it's animal or human, it utilizes the hemoglobin as its primary energy source, as its food source. Now, hydroxychloroquine interferes with that entire process. Hydroxychloroquine Thus, when you apply it to a COVID situation, okay, it prevents those glycoproteins from binding to the red blood cells. That is why when I have that doctor here who's literally 15 minutes from where I live, who's cured at this point 1,000 COVID patients, 100% cure, no hospitalizations, no intubations, and he's done it with hydroxychloroquine. And he said some of my patients were under severe breathing difficulties. They had bad respiratory issues, and in a matter of hours, it cleared up. How is that possible? Because the link between the glycoprotein that is being secreted by COVID-19 and the hemoglobin, that link is completely severed. That it inhibits it, stops it dead in its track. It puts a sock into the mouth of that glycoprotein. That's what we're discovering, folks. So this is the information that's coming. I'm like, we shouldn't put them on ventilators. Oh, it's desaturation. Oh, what's the only drug that effectively destroys the glycoprotein binding apparatus of the COVID-19 virus? What's the only drug in the world that does it? Hydroxychloroquine. That's exactly why from day one, Trump's like, yeah, hydroxychloroquine. I feel it's going to do a tremendous job. It's going to be nobody knows about hydroxychloroquine better than I do. We have the best hydroxychloroquine like nobody's ever seen before. It's the greatest. It's tremendous. And that's exactly what you're seeing.
Yeah. What's very interesting is that, he goes on, and Sasha, you're right. He doesn't, he's in the medical community, right? So he goes on to state that, he doesn't fault anyone in the medical community, doctors, whatever, that, these protocols were established based upon, the early information. So you're right. There's no finger pointing needed at this time being. And there's no need to play the entire video, but he just, very humble about what he would like to take place. And he's just asking for the experts, the doctors, the medical community to get together and say, hey, let's think about this differently. Let's look at this. Let's be brave enough to assess this. And, we don't have to worry about the previous, if there was mistakes are made, but we're talking about people's lives here. My concern is why I'm discussing it here on our platform is because that the legacy media is going to be very slow, very bulky. They're going to, fill this out, and this can't wait, and do your own research. So that's, again, he's just, very humble in his approach. And, I applaud him for being, brave enough to step outside of his position and, go on social media and share his findings.
Mm-hmm. And there's probably a big concern of medical malpractice claims for people who did get the ventilator and die if it turns out that was the wrong procedure.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny to me how the media has been bad-mouthing hydroxychloroquine. Oh, my God. I mean, I get into the cesspool sometimes of Twitter, and I just have to respond. Some idiot was like, oh, my God, because it's going to be so dangerous, and it's going to kill people. It has so many side effects. I'm like, you freaking moron. It's less toxic than aspirin. At worst, you get a bellyache. God.
Well, and I did. I shared this. I have a lot of different friends in the medical community. And I shared with them. I said, "Hey, look, do me a favor. Give this a look. Give it a listen. Just go into it with an open mind." And I heard back from several of them yesterday saying, "You know what? Well, I won't disclose her name. She's like, it's weird because as we've been doing the ventilators and forcing really cranking up the oxygen." We've noticed that it's not helping, and this is probably could perfectly explain. In fact, the UK Prime Minister Boris, is it Johnson or Johnson? Johnson. He was taken actually, to the ICU and placed on a vent, and his condition deteriorated. And they're like, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't working." So they took him off the vent.
Yep. And notice in a matter of a day or in a matter of like 24 to 48 hours, he's out of ICU.
He's out.
That doesn't happen, bro.
No. So
I wonder what they gave him.
So yeah, really. So again, this is saving people's lives here, and this is important stuff for the people that are tuning into this broadcast right now to share this information. Get it to your family, friends, in the medical community, and like I said, it's not a matter of who was right, who was wrong. whether this was a bioweapon or 5G and all that bullshit that people just want to keep talking about for clickbait purposes. This is a matter of saving people's lives potentially. So do your part to share this and get this information out. I'm sorry to go on about it, but like I said, I just think this is so important because, we're not going to hear the CDC come out. We're not going to hear this probably in the next, whatever the doctor is advising on the CDC. And, we need to push back. We need to get this to go mainstream so that people can hear this doctor's message and really reestablish and take a look at those protocols again. I'm not a doctor by no means, so do your own research. But when I see content like this, it's featured on WebMD and featured on that platform, it's not like it's on 8chan or Reddit or something like that. So anyway.
Hey, man. Good stuff.
Sorry to go on about that. That was a long time. That was like over 30 minutes on
Thanks.
that.
You ruined the whole show.
I know. Shoot.
Oh, that was good information. Yeah.
Hopefully my rant was good. Hopefully, did you guys
Yeah.
enjoy
Oh my God, I was impressed at how much medical knowledge you have there.
But anyway, Siege, what's going on in the world? Did you know a quick little entertainment news? I actually got excited about this, dude. Guess who's gonna be playing? Guess who's gonna be the next Wolverine, bro?
Who?
Because Wolverine, that the whole X-Men Wolverine franchise has been destroyed because of Fox, because it wasn't really a Marvel product. Okay, dude, one of my favorite actors, who I think is one of the best actors in the world. He's amazing. Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy is going to be Wolverine. I'm stoked.
Is that what you're excited about coming into the show?
Well, no, I was excited about something else, man.
Okay.
Like crypto related. I got to keep. It's going to be hush hush mush mush until I'm clear to share.
Well, I think that's a great segue into our conversation in regards to the Fed and their intervention policies of, just printing money like there's no tomorrow, and taking a look at the long-term impact of that, especially as it relates to, again, we've talked about this for several years, where people, literally to become their own banks, right? And
yeah,
I think it's hard time for people. It's difficult, because you're putting food on the table, you're trying to keep up with your bills and so forth, but as far as taking a look at diversifying out, I think now is the time to really start considering, in terms of different, whether it's metals or cryptocurrencies. What are you guys thinking about the Fed and all their crazy actions?
There's so many layers to that, man. There's so many layers. Sasha, you go first.
Well, BitMEX put out some really good research yesterday around Bitcoin and inflation. And basically their conclusion was this is the best time to be buying Bitcoin. And
oh, yeah.
I tend to agree, although I never like to say that, too loudly, because you just don't want people you don't want to be wrong and have people buy under your advice and then hate you for it later. But it does seem like it's, shaping up to be the epicenter for what Bitcoin should need to thrive. Although I don't know if it, we haven't got the infrastructure for Bitcoin built strongly enough. I feel like we needed 1 or 2 more years before this financial crash, where every merchant should be set up to be able to accept Bitcoin at their place of service, so everyone could immediately move their businesses online and not have to worry about even the banks being closed or anything like that. I guess that it's so easy to buy stuff with the credit card that Bitcoin, it just doesn't get used like that. And then this time, it's in a lot of the hedge funds and whatnot. So it kind of got wrecked a few weeks ago, but it's slowly coming back. And I think we're just going to see it, go through its halvening and then hopefully, take off after that and become a place where people are, trying to get out of their inflationary currency and get into a deflationary one. But same thing with metals, silver, anything like that, basically.
Yeah.
But
did you guys see the CNBC interview? I missed it yesterday. Gus was screaming about it with I was talking with Gus privately, but it was Chamath Palihapitiya, the billionaire venture capitalist. He was on there, and dude, he was I can't believe they let this guy talk on CNBC. I heard a little bit about his interview. It was sick. CJ, I'm going to forward you the link. Could you just pull this up? I'll forward it to you, okay? You got to pull it up because I don't know how to do the audio on because the audio option is not available on my end. Maybe it's yours because you're the moderator, I guess. So I'll send it over to you. Hold on. This is like hilarious, man. I couldn't believe it, CJ. I couldn't believe it. All right,
how's
buddy,
the loan program going, Sasha, with the businesses that you're helping?
Oh, it's been really frustrating. So last week we started putting, I think it opened, what was it, 2 weeks ago now? It opened, yeah, I think it was. I don't know. Time is going so funny, but from the time it opened, I sent all the information to 2 different banks, and then one of the banks is still going. The other one closed, saying it can't accept any more applications, and then the Cross River Bank is still, but they're still asking you think you get the application submitted, and then it gets sent back asking for a bit more information, and it seems like they just keep getting different information from the government. So I'll feel a lot better when the loans are funded rather than just in the application stage.
Yeah, right. Yeah, completely understood. Okay, I got this up. Here we go.
Perfect. Here we go. Listen to this.
Okay, let me hang on a second. I forgot.
I can't believe they let him on. It's
unbelievable. Right, I forget. Okay, here we go. I always forget to click this little thing on audio. There we go. Share.
Where is that little thing, by the way?
You're right. It may be different for you on my screen. Okay, here it is.
I'll agree with you that more money for Main Street is needed. Maybe not in spite of
put it up if you can,
to all of these companies or whatever that make up the economy as well. That more money is needed everywhere, perhaps. But are you suggesting, you keep saying propping up zombie companies? Are you arguing to let airlines, for example, fail?
Yes.
Why? I mean, how does that make sense in the broader scheme of the economy?
Because when you look at what it means, this is why I'm saying, this is a lie that's been purported by Wall Street. When a company fails, it does not fire their employees. It goes through a packaged bankruptcy, right? If anything, what happens is the people who have the pensions inside those companies, the employees of these companies, end up owning more of the company. The people that get wiped out are the speculators that own the unsecured tranches of debt, or the folks that own the equity. And by the way, those are the rules of the game. That's right, because these are the people that purport to be the most sophisticated investors in the world. They deserve to get wiped out. But the employees don't get wiped out. The pensions don't typically get wiped out.
Why does anybody, I just don't understand, why does anybody deserve, using your word, to get wiped out from a crisis created like this? How does anybody deserve to get wiped out?
Well, but just be clear, who are we talking about? We're talking about a hedge fund that serves a bunch of billionaire family offices. Who cares? Let them get wiped out. Who cares? They don't get the summer in the Hamptons. Who cares?
I mean, there are people. You don't think the employees? Hold on, Scott. You don't think the employees of these companies own stocks? I mean, own their stocks, own the company's stocks?
You can look on Bloomberg and you can see what percentage of these companies are typically owned by. These things are owned by BlackRock. These things are owned by these huge, amorphous organizations. Ultimately, downstream, and the employee owns a few $100s or a few $1,000 of shares.
Well, I just don't understand. So this is like a natural disaster. And why does anybody deserve to get wiped out? Wouldn't that be immoral in and of itself?
No, because what's happening right now is what I'll tell you is on Main Street today, people are getting wiped out. And right now, rich CEOs are not, boards that had horrible governance are not, hedge funds are not, people are. 6 million people just this week alone, basically saying, holy mackerel, I don't know how I'm going to make, my own expenses for the next few weeks, days, months. So it's happening today to individual Americans. And what we've done is disproportionately prop up and protect poor performing CEOs, companies, and boards. And you have to wash these people out.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, let them all fail. You've been propping up zombie institutions for last several years. Wipe them all out. Who cares if they don't get a summer in the Hamptons? Who cares if they're holding? These are mismanaged, piss poor, badly maintained and managed firms and companies. Let them go. I cannot believe they let Chamath on there to say that. Gus was Gus was losing. He goes, "Yo, you got to listen to this." I heard this. I was like, "Oh my god!" And the full interview, I think it was like 15 or 20 minutes or something like that. I'm trying to find the full interview. Oh man!
And we have one that another one we're gonna share here real quick. Sasha, you can walk us through this. Okay, here we go.
Oh yeah, this is my husband's video we were talking about last time.
Nice.
As Wall Street absorbed the number of body blows it took today.
The world has gone mad and the system is broken.
The American financial system is rocked to its foundation as top Wall Street institutions topple under a mountain of debt.
Bailed out by the taxpayers.
It's pretty clear they cannot be trusted.
He said, your problem is that you're trying to understand this as an economic story. Once you look at it as a crime story, you'll get it.
The Fed is losing control once again. In just a couple of days, the U.S. Federal Reserve has pumped out $125 billion. And handed that money over.
We started this video using all the 2008 stuff, and he started it like several months ago before the crash. All the everything made sense to what's going on right now too.
It's perfect.
Money help me rise above.
Those little ones were my contribution.
My faith and my money help me rise above. But my faith and my money help me rise above.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, can you guys hear me again?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great, man.
When I do that audio share, it's difficult to hear really anything.
Oh yeah, because you probably have your own turned up.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
But anyway, yeah. Interesting times indeed.
Indeed. At least we had some fun.
Yeah.
We'll be back. The economy will be back. It's going to be a brave new world.
I wish I wish I had more money on the sidelines. Every time these kind of things happen,
I'm about to go rob a bank, Sasha.
I know. Yeah, I just want to pump everything into the stock market and Bitcoin and metals.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, we tried to do a home equity loan just before it kind of like the first week that this was happening. We got some stuff in the mail saying they would reduce rates were down. They were going to reduce our rate to, I think it was like 2 point something. It was really low, and bring our mortgage down, and we could take out a bunch of equity. So we tried to do that, and then now they're behind, and they say that it's going to take till August to process it, and the rates are 4%. So the rate has doubled, like pretty much from 2 to 4 through this, even though the government rates are down, the lending rates are not. So I don't know what's, obviously the mortgage industry is going to be under stress through this. So that seems to be their reaction, is not to give out the money right now, like they were trying to do right before this started. So,
yep, absolutely.
But there's some companies that lend against your Bitcoin. So we're kind of looking at possibly doing that just to get.
Before you do any of this secured stuff, give me a holler. On the other side of this, don't put up any of your collateral. Don't do it.
Yeah,
I can get you unsecured. I got lending partners. I'll get you anywhere between $100K to, depending on how things are set up to $800K unsecured.
Oh wow.
You don't have to worry about it, and just. Like, who cares? Like, just take the money, run.
That's what I think right now.
That's all. Look, I got a guy that does asset protection. I mean, if somebody tries to sue you for $10 million, you go laugh at their face. Who cares? Screw them. I mean, they're literally printing money, right? Literally printing. Yeah. You screw these guys.
Why are we paying taxes? Why are we paying taxes at all?
Why pay taxes? Screw it.
I did get a new car last week.
Say again?
I got a new car last week.
Good for you.
There you go.
I walked out where they gave me $500, and I don't have to make a payment until October.
Oh my God.
Wow,
Oh my
that's
God.
awesome.
Then you can just turn it in.
What did you get?
I know, right? That's what I was thinking.
Sasha, what'd you get?
I got a Golf GTI.
I love GTI. Are you kidding me?
Like metallic green color. It's with like red trim. It has the
Yes.
red, like things in the wheels.
Convertible?
Well,
No.
no, it's not. I traded in my convertible to get it, but
nice.
I had
Love GTIs. Love GTIs. Huge
yeah, it's
fan.
the Autobahn edition, and
Yes.
it's quick and it drives well. And
My wife has the Jetta GLI, and
nice.
yeah, it's basically the sedan version of a GTI, and it's like, dude, it's like no, it's like I'm like, you want another car? She's like, nope. I'm telling you, man. If there's one car, if somebody said, hey, look, you got to spend less than 40 grand, you could only have one car, what would it be? And it's got to be brand new. GTI, hands down. It's the most practical, most fun to drive car you can buy, and the build quality. You sit in a GTI, like, wow, this is like the build quality is like what you find like a $60,000 car. It's amazing. It's amazing build quality.
Mm-hmm. We went looking at a Tiguan. We were actually both going to put, both of us, my husband and I, have like 2015 cars. So we were going to try it, and we're not driving right now. And this is probably boring for your viewers, but
no, it's not boring for me. I'm a gearhead.
Okay. When I moved from Florida, I never updated my plates, but now the tags, and I tried, but it was a big thing at the DMV, and I had to go back 3 or 4 times, and because I'm on a TN visa, they couldn't figure out how to put it in the system. So then they closed. Like, I went back the other day to try and look into it again, and my plate was expired now, and they're closed due to COVID. I couldn't get my green card processed. I was supposed to go for my biometrics on March 26th, but that's closed too. My Canadian passport got stolen in Vegas, which has my TN visa in it. Like, my whole bag got lost. So basically, I'm undocumented at the moment. I have a DC driver's license.
You're undocumented.
I don't have the right.
Undocumented
illegally. Sasha, no worry. I have several friends in the exact same situation. It's no worries. Okay.
I can't go back. I can't go get my documents right now. It's all closed. So anyone who is like in a situation trying to get documents or trying to travel, you just can't right now. So when I went to the car dealership, they were able to give me a proper license plate. That was a big part of my motivation for getting a car, was to find a way to get to be able to legally drive right now.
You know what the best part about a GTI is the tunability, is the aftermarket and the tunability of that car. I had a GTI when I was in college.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I made a bet with Jeff. We always make bets on the price of Bitcoin, but I think I'm going to be right on this one. And by December, he's going to have to put one of those sticker thing, those like you can get so many different custom paint like stickers that go over the paint. I'm gonna make him do that on my
when you're ready, you should get like an APR a reflat an upgraded tune to your computer of the car.
Oh yeah,
you'd get another 80 to 100 horsepower. It's insane.
Oh wow,
it's insane.
Yeah, it already has some nice.
I love it. I love GTIs. My God, I'm a huge fan. Anyway, guys, we're at the end of the broadcast. We got Harley Schlanger coming up next in about 2 to 3 minutes, so we got to set up for that. Sasha, thank you so much for coming on. And folks, check out her work over at the Hodlcast. Get her podcast, start listening to it. And Sasha, what is your website?
SashaHodler.com.
You got it. There it is. And with that being said, folks, we are over and out. Take it away, CJ.
Yeah, give me a minute. I got to find the button. I got too many tabs open. There we go.
Cool deal.